Welcome to this special bonus episode of the podcast. By now, if you follow me on social media or you are on my email list, you probably know that I've launched my new session of my live course, Podcast Supercharger. But I realize all the people that listen to the podcast, you may not have seen that stuff yet, or you may not have had time to see that stuff. You're listening to this show while you're commuting, while you are working out at the gym, you're out running, or you're at work, and you may not have had time to see my social posts or click all the links or things like that. So I wanted to take this chance to tell you about Podcast Supercharger and hear about how it's beneficial and who this is for and who it's not for. Podcast Supercharger is a 6-week live course starting in early February, running through March 2019. I created this so that you could skip the frustration of creating a podcast and learn how to create, craft, plan, produce, and promote a podcast under the guidance of a professional podcaster and a producer, me. Right now, there's about 7 days left in the registration period. And if you want to stop right here and just go ahead on over to the website and register now, it's dannyosmond.com/podcast supercharger. One of the biggest questions I get about this course is, what do I actually do in the course? Well, here's a story that illustrates exactly what we do. Parker Larison, who is owner of the Parker Larison Law Firm, he was looking to increase his brand footprint in the Ponchatoula and Hammond areas of Louisiana. He chose to create a podcast about his community rather than about the law in order to share news, interesting characters and stories, business and restaurant reviews, and establish him as an expert and a trusted source in the region. Rather than do a podcast about uninsured motorists and car accidents, he was more interested in becoming the podcast and social media mayor of his town. Parker loved the idea of being able to tell all these stories, but he didn't know how to get the show off the ground. Like many successful business owners, he knew how to run his office, execute traditional marketing strategies, and make big decisions, but he never really had to create relationship-building content like a podcast. Content marketing is a pillar of any business. For a small business like a law firm, it's even more vital. Parker wanted to broaden his understanding of podcasting so that he would never have to jump from client to client or contract to contract. He wanted to step into the podcasting space on the right foot. And he wanted to skip the trial and error, the mistakes and the frustration of trying to figure it out all on his own while wasting hours and hours reading how-to guides and searching for and watching numerous do-it-yourself videos on YouTube without any guarantee that he'd know what to do in the end. Believe it or not, most success starts with a seasoned pro who is willing to become a novice again. Parker had an immense amount of experience and expertise as a successful attorney. Most people would think someone with his body of work would have no issue finding clients or landing speaking engagements. The special thing about Parker was that despite his vast experience, he really came in as a novice. He was ready to learn. And I found that this attitude is the key to creating a podcast that connects you with your ideal listener. So you know me. I'm Danny Osmond. I'm going to be your guide in this course. Here's the deal. One thing that really ticks me off is people whose worldview has become so narrow that they aren't able to walk an inch, let alone a mile, in somebody else's shoes. One reason this happens is that they aren't exposed to anything outside of their normal channels of TV, radio, social media, family, and friends. This is why I love podcasting, and it's why I love helping podcasters. Podcasts are the only form of new media where you can actually hear a full conversation and complete stories. Podcasts are great to get your expertise out there and position you as a thought leader and influencer. The 3 most common questions people ask me about Podcast Supercharger are, what happens during the 6 weeks? What can I expect to leave the course with? And how much does it cost? So let's answer those. What happens during the 6 weeks? Prior to your first group call, you'll have a 15-minute setup call with me where I get to know you and your needs. I'll also set you up with several resources so that you'll have the equipment and preparation you need for the course. In week 1, we talk about branding and planning. We go through a framework called StoryBrand that we'll use as a filter for your messaging. You'll learn the most important steps in reframing your marketing message. You are the guide, not the hero. We then use that brand script to create your podcast title and write a description for your podcast. We also learn about show formats and choose the format that you'll use for your show. In week 2, we talk about content creation and the design elements you'll need. We outline the episode content for your first 5 episodes and your trailer episode. We design your podcast artwork and write the copy that you'll need for your podcast intro. We also choose creative audio elements for your show, music, transitions, things like that. In week 3, we're going to get into gear and recording. We're going to set up your gear, and we're going to talk about your room and how to set it up for the best recordings possible. We learn the basics of audio recording for solo shows and interview shows, and we're going to record your first episode. In week 4, we talk post-production, what happens after you stop recording. You're going to learn how to produce your episodes so that they sound polished and amazing. You're going to learn the basics of editing, mixing, and mastering for your podcasts. In week 5, we talk about distribution. You're going to set up your RSS feed with a hosting service like Libsyn. We're going to upload and publish your trailer episode, and then you're going to list your podcast in major directories like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and TuneIn. And then finally, in week 6, launch and promotion. You're going to create your launch strategy and the promotion plan. We're going to plan out your calls to action, CTAs, and create your lead generators, or lead magnets, as some people call them. You're also going to learn how to measure your results and understand your statistics. In the last 2 weeks of the course, you and I will also have 2 30-minute private sessions where we will refine and finish up any specific needs you have for the show. Now, that second question, what can I expect to leave the course with? Well, you'll have a clearly defined brand strategy for a very specific type of listener that you're trying to target. You'll also walk away with all of your gear and the technical knowledge you need to start your podcast, and at least 2 of your first 5 episodes fully produced. You'll also have actionable next steps, both technical and promotional, on how to launch your podcast, as well as steps to start growing your audience immediately. And then finally, people want to know, how much is it? The cost of the course is $897 per person. Each session is limited to 10 people, and you'll be asked to answer a few questions before we put you into a group to ensure camaraderie and a mutually beneficial environment, and to make sure I have enough information about you and your business so that we can hit the ground running when we start. Now, here's what I do to help make Podcast Supercharger the best investment of your time. My responsibilities include showing you exactly what you need to do to create a successful podcast so that you don't waste time and you don't make mistakes. I'm going to make the gear and technical aspects of podcasting easy to use and understand. I'm going to share successful techniques and strategies that I use with my podcasting clients. I'm going to vet the applicants to make sure there's camaraderie and mutually beneficial environments. And I'm going to facilitate the entire course, including the training sessions, marketing advice, and brand strategy I offer to you and others. So I just wanted to take a second and share a couple of testimonials from students who've been through the course in the past. This first one is from Cindy Wong Brandt, who's the host of Parenting Forward. Cindy says, Danny was instrumental in helping me launch my podcast. He saved me a lot of brain power by providing me a list of equipment to purchase, providing podcast music choices, creating the show description, and the podcast cover art. Everything I needed to launch a professional podcast with his vast knowledge of best practices so that I didn't have to spend time learning from mistakes. His expertise was invaluable, and best of all, he does it with a heart and passion. I really enjoy partnering with him and broadcasting my message out into the world. Thanks, Cindy. And this next one comes from Ernie the Attorney Svensson, host of Law Firm Autopilot. Ernie said, I'd been attempting to get my podcast off the ground for about a year, but just couldn't get my act together enough to feel confident about launching it. When I met Danny, I realized there was an easy and effective way to address my anxiety. I was semi-worried about having to spend money on getting help producing a podcast. But now I realize that getting help was the best thing I did. Frankly, I probably wouldn't have launched my podcast yet if it weren't for Danny. And I definitely wouldn't have been so consistent in putting out new episodes. Meeting Danny in person was pivotal because I saw how knowledgeable he was and how passionate he felt about helping people like me get started, and then making sure that we succeed and keep going. Danny is a rock. In the months since I've launched, I've gotten tons of compliments on my show. It's strange how quickly I attracted a loyal audience. So now I'm happy that I was able to get my show off the ground. I can't thank Danny enough. And I enthusiastically recommend him to anyone who is thinking of starting a podcast. A couple of lawyers have taken my recommendation and are also thrilled to be working with Danny with their podcasts. The best thing you can do to create a successful podcast is get good help. And Danny is the absolute best person I know to help folks like you and me. Thank you, Ernie. So now let me update you on Parker. He's now growing his audience, he's landing more clients, and he's doing the work he truly loves and believes in. And this is a quote from Parker. The podcast Facebook page already has over 1,000 likes, and considering that's more than 10% of the population of Ponchatoula, I'm pretty excited. Could not have done it without Danny's help and guidance. I've gotten great local press coverage, and I'm receiving great feedback, including paid sponsorship offers and several unsolicited requests to be interviewed. Danny has been a real treasure to work with. If you're thinking of starting your own podcast and you've got the means to get help, give Danny a look. He's awesome. He really cares about helping you realize your goals. I couldn't recommend him more. If you want to check out Parker's podcast, it's the Ponchatoula Podcast. Ponchatoula spelled Ponchatoula, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes. So I would love for you to sign up for the next podcast Supercharger session today. The next session, like I said, begins in February. There's a strict limit to 10 participants. This is to ensure that each participant receives ample time and attention to their needs and their specific show. By enrolling in Podcast Supercharger, you're going to skip the trial and error because this program has already been proven to work and will teach you exactly what you need to know. And I stand behind it 100%. So if you're unhappy with it for any reason, all you got to do is let me know within 30 days and I'll give you a full refund. There's literally no risk for you to try it. And if you apply the lessons inside, you will create a podcast that delivers more trusting, paying customers. After you register, I'm going to send you a series of questions that will allow me to learn about you, your business, and see what needs you want to address. You're also going to be asked to have a quick call with me before the course in order to get to know you, and so we have traction moving forward. Remember, the cost for the course is $897 per person, and if you want to register, just go to dannyosmond.com/podcast supercharger. And if you know anyone who you think would benefit from this course, please share this with them. Please have them go to dannyosmond.com/podcast supercharger today. So thanks for joining me. I hope you check out the course, and I will see you again on Monday.